Welcome to Soul Path Alchemy, the place where we talk about the things most people avoid: sex, relationships, grief, desire, betrayal, healing, and everything in between. It's honest, it's unsanitized, and if it's what you've been craving, you're in the right place. I'm Annie O'Brien, psychotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, and if you need more info, it's all in the bio. Let's begin. Heads up, this podcast isn't therapy. It's bold, blunt, and irreverent, but it's not a substitute for professional help. Full disclaimer is in the blurb below. Hey, it's Annie. So last week I was rereading David Schnarch's Passionate Marriage. I love that book. It's one of those books that hides its most devastating truths in the back like a treasure chest. I absolutely love this book. I've read it over and over and over again. And there was a single line that just popped out at me. The person in a relationship with the lowest libido has the most power. He doesn't fully unpack it there at the back. He just drops it in and walks away. And the more I sat with it, the more I realized this isn't just about sex. It's about power. It's about equality. It's about how intimacy actually works. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So today I'm going to pull on that thread because underneath it lies a whole architecture of desire, conversation, affection, and the subtle ways couples negotiate who leads and who follows and who gives and who withholds. Schnarch may have left us with the zinger, but I'm going to talk you through and let's unpack and see if we can get to the heart of what it really means. So let's start with the obvious. Power equals control of access. So the partner with the lower libido controls access. They decide if and when sex happens. The higher libido partner can try, they can seduce, initiate, plead, wait, manipulate, and bargain. But at the end of the day, the one who wants less has the veto. And veto power is power. It means you set the terms of engagement. You can delay, withhold, or grant access, which puts you in the position of gatekeeper, whether or not you consciously chose it or not. And that's why Schnarch's line is so devastatingly true. So wanting less gives you the ability to dictate the rhythm of intimacy. The higher desire partner lives in hope, in anticipation, sometimes in shame and resentment, because they don't get to unilaterally decide. The lower desire partner, without lifting a finger, holds the reins. And this just doesn't happen in the bedroom. This is a mirror of how power plays out everywhere in a relationship. Whoever can tolerate less connection, whether it's sexual, emotional, conversational, they set the tempo the couple moves at, which means libido isn't just about sex drive, it's about leverage. And this is where I want to pause and ask you to ask yourselves, how does this show up in your relationship? When it comes to sex, who's holding the gate? When it comes to conversations, who's the one who wants to talk and who's the one who decides when the talking stops? With affection, who reaches out and who pulls away? And in conflict, who pushes for repair and who withdraws? So you'll notice a pattern. The person who wants less sets the terms. And that's the hidden architecture of power. So don't just think about libido here, widen the lens. Where are you the gatekeeper and where are you the one standing on the outside of the gate, waiting to be let in? Now imagine if you actually brought this out into the open. What if instead of silently letting the low desire partner set the pace, the two of you named it, talked about it, and negotiated? What if you said, okay, sometimes he leads, sometimes I do. Sometimes we meet in the middle. Let's not leave one of us always waiting and the other always withholding. Because when you make it conscious, when you name it, you can create balance. You can build a rhythm when there's give and take, not just veto and pursuit. And that might mean scheduling intimacy in a way that feels playful instead of pressured. It might mean saying yes when you'd usually say no, because you know equality matters more than comfort in a particular moment. It might mean the higher desire partner learning to self-regulate. So sex isn't the only doorway into closeness. It can mean loads and loads and loads of things. That's the shift. When you dialogue, when you trade turns, when you stop making one partner the permanent gatekeeper, suddenly you move from power struggle into partnership. And intimacy of every kind stops being about who holds control and starts being about who shows up. So desire is inherently asymmetrical. So David Schnarch's whole model of differentiation is really about how couples handle asymmetry. Because desire is never perfectly matched. Not for sex, not for affection, not for conversation, not even for closeness itself. One person almost always wants more connection, more touch, more dialogue, more intimacy. And the other partner, by wanting less, holds the trump card. And here's what I see every single day. People carry these truths inside but don't tell their partner. They tell me in sessions. They tell their friends. They might journal about it, but they don't bring it to the one person who actually needs to hear it. And guess what? If you don't talk about it, nothing changes. All you do is seethe, you resent, you build secret stories in your head about what it means that your partner doesn't want you as much as you want them, and that silence corrodes intimacy faster than the asymmetry itself. Because asymmetry isn't the problem, secrets are, withdrawal is, pretending you're fine when you're slowly burning up inside is an issue. So here's my invitation. Where does this play out in your own relationship? Where are you biting your tongue instead of being honest? Where are you waiting for your partner to magically guess what you need instead of saying it out loud? Because unless you bring truth, honesty, and openness into the asymmetry, you'll stay stuck in the same old loop. Or as I call it in therapy, hopping on the same merry-go-round. You'll keep circling the same frustrations. It's only when you raise the conversation that intimacy can grow. So stop and ask yourself right now, where are you holding back the truth? Where are you seething in silence instead of being honest? Because here's the thing, your partner can't fix what you won't name. Secrets don't protect intimacy, they poison it. And if you want change, you've got to open your mouth. Otherwise, don't complain. You cannot build closeness on silence. So now let's turn to the higher libido partner's vulnerability. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The partner who wants more is always more vulnerable. Why? Because they're the one who has to risk rejection. They're the one who initiates, who waits, who hopes. They're the one who gets told no more often. And that puts them in a chasing position, whether they like it or not. And this is where resentment often builds. The higher desire partner feels humiliated, unworthy, or ashamed, and they start to believe there's something wrong with them, when in reality, what's wrong is the silence. What's wrong is pretending this imbalance isn't happening. So here's another kick in the bum for you. If you're the higher libido partner, stop making your entire self-worth hinge on whether your partner says yes or no. That's not love, that's dependence. Desire is never going to be symmetrical. And your growth edge is learning how to regulate yourself to stay open without collapsing into shame or anger every time you're turned down. And if you're the lower libido partner, here is your kick in the ass. Stop pretending that you don't hold power. You do. Every no, every delay, every withdrawal sends a message. So own it. Don't hide behind it. Don't use it to punish. If you don't want sex, talk about why. If you're not up for conversation, say that honestly instead of shutting down. Because the minute you both stop dodging the truth, the minute you start owning your position in this dynamic, the whole thing becomes workable. Until then, you're just dancing around the power imbalance, letting it control you instead of confronting it. And now I need to say something that surely might ruffle feathers. So please, do not shoot the messenger here. In my personal experience, it's usually women who are the lower libido partners. Not always, but the majority of the time. And here's the part that matters. Healthy women do have high sex drives when their hormones are balanced and their bodies feel safe. So when that desire isn't there, it's often a sign something deeper is out of sync, hormonally, emotionally, or relationally. but we cannot tiptoe around the impact this has on men because it isn't fair. Men want to be desired just as much as women do. And when they spend years in a sexless marriage, constantly rejected, constantly told no, it erodes them. It eats away at their confidence, their masculinity, their sense of being wanted. It affects men pretty badly. This is where I'm asking for honesty, not defensiveness. This dynamic usually skews towards men, uh, as them being the higher desire partner. It's usually just as a result of testosterone. And that doesn't mean women are wrong, broken, or to blame. It means we need to talk about it openly because otherwise couples just collapse into a kind of quiet misery. And desire is not a gender war, it's a human need. And unless both partners are willing to face it together, while one person ends up starved while the other holds all the power, that's not intimacy, that's slow death. So, of course, I'm not ignoring the layers here of complexity. Libido is influenced by so many things: hormones, stress, resentment, antidepressants, exhaustion, body image, past trauma. It's quite a cesspit of material, and we could spend hours unpacking it. But the point for today is simple: if you don't talk about it, if you don't face it, it silently dictates the whole relationship. So, naming it is the first step towards change. And sometimes, let's be really, really honest, while we're at it, it's not hormones or exhaustion at all. Sometimes it's resentment, withholding, and pure game playing, using sex as a weapon. This is really unhealthy in relationships. Sex and withholding of sex should never be used to punish someone. So using refusal as punishment, that's not healthy. Seriously, 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 not healthy. So not healthy. Because that's not just about libido, that's about contempt. And I refer you to the Gottmans here. And if that's what's going on, then the only way forward is truth telling. You've got to have the hard conversation about what's underneath it, because punishing your partner with your body by withholding your body is a fast track to killing all trust, intimacy, and love. So let's look at the unconscious dynamics. So here's the thing: libido is never just about biology, it's about psychology. Very often, low desire is carrying a message. It can be fear of intimacy, fear of being engulfed, fear of losing yourself. It can be about control. The only place you feel powerful, perhaps, is by saying no. It can be silent protest against unresolved hurt. In other words, withdrawal isn't always about not wanting sex. It's about what sex represents. So refusing becomes a way of communicating without words. And the tragedy is that the higher desire partner almost always misreads it. They think, I'm not attractive enough, or there's something wrong with me, when in fact the refusal is often about the other person's inner struggle. So here's the kicker: if you do not make the unconscious conscious, you both stay stuck. You keep playing at the same old dance, getting on the same old merry-go-round, use whatever analogy you choose, one chasing, one withdrawing, without ever naming what's actually happening underneath. And that's where resentment festers, because the signal never gets decoded. So here's the question: what is your no really saying? And if you're the one always chasing, what's your pursuit really about? Until you face that, you're just acting out old patterns without naming them. Let's look at the developmental edge. This is where Schnarch goes deeper. He argues that the low desire partner actually holds the key to growth, because the relationship can't evolve until they step forward, engage, and risk intimacy. But the high desire partner isn't off the hook either. Their growth edge is learning to tolerate rejection without crumbling, to stop outsourcing their entire sense of worth to whether their partner says yes. So both people are being pushed to grow. One has to stop hiding behind withdrawal, the other has to stop collapsing into shame. That's the developmental edge. Learning to stay differentiated, to hold on to yourself in the face of your partner's difference. It's not about fixing desire discrepancies, it's about using them as a crucible. The fire in the forge that either burns your relationship down or refines it into something deeper, stronger, and more intimate than before. So when Schnarch said the person with the lowest libido has the most power. He wasn't just making an observation about sex. He was pointing to a universal truth about intimacy. Whoever wants less in any domain sets the pace. And also, just think about the early days of a relationship too. If you think about it, this plays out everywhere. Libido is only one expression of a larger pattern. If one partner wants to talk and the other doesn't, the talker has to wait, beg, or adjust. The silent one holds the control. If one partner craves touch and the other is less comfortable, the less affectionate one decides how much touch is exchanged. And if one partner is ready to move in, get married, or merge finances, but the other isn't, the one holding back is the one who dictates the timeline. If one partner pushes to repair after conflict and the other resists, the unwilling person keeps the rupture alive. So it's not just about libido, it's about conversational drive, affectional style, commitment level, conflict repair. In every case, the person who wants less has the trump card. Now, here's the key point. This asymmetry is not a pathology. So these desire discrepancies are actually a growth edge. What does that mean? So a growth edge is the exact place where you feel the most rubbed, the most uncomfortable, the most stretched in your relationship, but it's also the place where you're being asked to mature. It's essentially the fire that refines you. For the lower desire partner, the growth edge is to stop hiding behind withdrawal, to stop using no as a silent protest, or as the only form of power. To risk stepping forward, engaging, and letting yourself be vulnerable instead of choosing to stay defended. So for the higher desire partner, the growth edge is to stop outsourcing your worth to whether your partner says yes, to learn to regulate yourself, to hold your ground, and to ask without crumbling when you hear no. And this is where equality comes in. Equality in relationships does not mean sameness. You will never want exactly the same things and the same amounts at the same time. Equality means neither partner collapses into the other's rhythm, and neither partner dominates by withdrawal. It means that you both stay differentiated, just enough that you can negotiate, compromise, and take turns without losing yourselves. And that's why I keep coming back to honesty, truth, and openness, because if you're hiding, if you're seething in silence, if you're game playing, if you're withholding as punishment, you are not working through your growth edge, you're avoiding it. And avoidance kills intimacy far quicker than asymmetry ever will. So here is the invitation, and I'll leave you with this. Look at the asymmetries in your own relationship. Where do you want more than your partner? Where do you want less? How are you using that power, consciously or unconsciously? And what would it look like to bring equality and compromise into that space instead of secrecy, resentment, or withdrawal? Because the person who wants less does hold the power. But the real question is, what do you do with the power? Do you use it to punish? Do you hide? Do you avoid? Or do you use it to grow, to risk, and to meet your partner halfway? That is the edge. That's the crucible of intimacy. And it's only by facing it that you move from power struggle into partnership, from withholding into openness, and from control into deeper connection. So there's always going to be a power imbalance in life, in every relationship, in every friendship, in every family system. Power ebbs and flows. And sometimes you hold it and sometimes your partner does. Sometimes you're the one who wants less and therefore dictates the pace. And sometimes you're the one who wants more and has to wait. And yes, it flips constantly. But ignoring it, pretending the imbalance isn't there, that's what corrodes intimacy. Here's the truth. Power does not disappear by denial. So burying your head in the sand, guess what? It's not going to work. Power only diffuses when it's named, when you say it out loud, when you sit across from your partner and admit, hey, I'm holding the reins here on this one and I don't want to abuse that. Let's have a talk about it. Let's negotiate. I want to find balance. Do you? That's when power shifts from being a weapon to being a place of growth. And this just isn't about libido. This is about sex, intimacy, money, conversation, all the different currencies of relationship. Power sits inside them all. Who spends more, who earns more, who gives more, who withholds more, who risks more, who refuses more. And unless you can talk about those imbalances, they calcify into control, into resentment, and into secrets. But when you name them, when you make the invisible visible, you change the entire game. Suddenly, sex is not about gatekeeping, it's about shared rhythm. Money is not about control, it's about shared values. Intimacy is not about who wants more, it's about who's willing to show up. That is the shift from a silent power struggle to an open dialogue. So, if you want a relationship that lasts, stop being afraid of power, stop pretending it's not there, bring it to the table, talk about it, because intimacy isn't built on symmetry, it's built on negotiation. Equality doesn't mean sameness, it means both of you are willing to own your part in the imbalance and work it through. So that is what David Schnarch meant when he said the lower libido partner holds the most power. And that's why it matters. Because until you face power directly in sex, in money, in intimacy, in conversation, you are not truly relating. You're just circling each other, playing games in the dark. Power named is power diffused, and once it's diffused, love can actually breathe. So, here is your challenge. This week, choose one place in your relationship where you can see the power imbalance. Name it, bring it into conversation, and don't aim for sameness. Aim for honesty, negotiation, and compromise. That is the work. And that's how you turn power struggles into partnership. And that is how you make intimacy real. Because if you really, really love someone, truly love them, with a devotional, all-encompassing, embodied, attuned love, you will never abuse your power. You will hold it gently and humbly. You will be fair. You will take turns, because being fair and just matters. It's loving, it's respectful, and it's honoring. I'm Annie, and this is Soul Path Alchemy. Thank you for listening. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love it if you shared it with just one person who might need it today. And wherever you are, I hope you have a really lovely day.